Welcome to Close Encounters of the Blerd Kind. I'm Rynn.
I'm Weaver.
I'm Parker.
And we are your guides through this place for the place for all things black and nerdy. This is Close Encounters of the Blerd Kind. Woo! This is our first episode, so we are still figuring it out. This is the first. I mean, we've all, or at least I know that I and Weaver. Have you done podcasts before, Parker?
I've been planning a fictional Harley Quinn fanfic podcast for about 2 years now, and
Already a
so
fan.
I've got a small experience with that, but nothing published.
Well, you've got
yet.
a very professional microphone set up. Like you look like the most legit of all three of us.
Thank you. I would hope so. I spent like so much money on this, like triple digits for this microphone. I swear to God.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I know, Weaver, your face right now.
Well, yeah.
I got mine for free. I have a lot of artsy friends, and I just post on Facebook, hey, does anybody have a microphone? And my friend Lucas was like, yeah, here you go.
Nice. Mine is like, fancy. I think it was $100, but it was like, it's like for like streaming. It changes colors. It's pretty. But anyway, so we've all done individual sort of podcasts, but not so much together. So this is sort of a learning process, and we're inviting you to come along with us. And I believe today, are we going to start out with the House of the Dragon and such witch conversation?
Yeah.
Okay.
So our format that we have been playing around with is the first half we'll talk about like a group topic, and then in the back nine we'll each take turns talking about like a specific hyperfocus.
Yeah, so anyway, House of the Dragon it premiered last month, I suppose, or technically at the very end of August, actually, and it is a continuation, technically a prequel of Game of Thrones, the series, which took the world by storm in like 2011 and was like the most watched show like ever and was a cultural phenomenon up until the last season in 2019 that sucked ass, and then everybody kind of decided that to never talk about it again. So when I first heard that they were doing this show, I was like, okay, I don't know. I have a little bit of suspicions that how this is going to go, because I was so pissed at how Game of Thrones ended. But I just like, okay, I'll give it a chance. I'm like, well, maybe if it's bad, it'll at least be fun to make fun of. And so I went into it kind of thinking like, okay, well, it'll be bad, but we can just make fun of it. And it actually, like, my fiance and I went on and watched it, and it was actually pretty good. Like, the writing is pretty solid so far, I would say. Have y'all been watching it?
How are the costumes?
Costumes, I love it.
I only care about the costume.
Well, how do you rate those costumes, or how do you judge those costumes?
Oh yeah.
I haven't seen House of the Dragon yet, but I did watch all of Game of Thrones, and a lot of like people in the costuming community are of the opinion that Game of Thrones had some of the best costuming like in the history of television, because they really built like a whole language of costumes, right? They were internally cohesive, and it felt like a real world. You could tell if someone was from the north just by what kind of collar they had, what like colors they were wearing, what materials. People from King's Landing wore a lot of like flowy, loose silks. Like each individual culture had their own distinct look, and colors and textures and fabrics. It was phenomenal. And like there are a lot of other sort of fantasy shows that I honestly just did not enjoy and stopped watching solely because I didn't find the costumes up to par. Like, The Witcher. I watched like 3 episodes of The Witcher, and I just couldn't get into it because the costumes were nonsensical.
That's what I heard.
There was no sense of internal cohesion. You couldn't tell which like time period. Like there was this like banquet, and you couldn't tell who was like the home kingdom and who were the foreigners, because everybody's clothes came from like different historical time periods, and they just looked vastly different from each other, and you couldn't like, there was nothing to sort of like grasp onto.
Yeah. One thing about this show that I think is interesting is like I am like we all three have a different like focus. Like I'm the one who's just like really into like literary theming and stuff like that. Weaver is all about textiles. Anything you want to know about textiles.
I watched Wheel of Time, no joke, because the opening sequence has a loom in it. There's like the whole loom of the universe, and they like weave a tapestry, and that's the opening sequence. That's the reason I watched the Wheel of Time.
That's valid.
I like textiles.
And
my name.
Parker, I think you're very much into like comic books and stuff like that, right? Like comic lore.
I'm super into comic lore. Generally, I was it's been like for me special interest, like especially growing up, it was like 70% like dark fantasy and like fantasy fiction, because that was something like everybody in my family, like when we go grocery shopping, for context, you can tell who belongs to what family because we all look like the Addams family, like in like a shop, right? Like I am not the only one of my kind in terms of aesthetic, and so
I
my
love
mother
your
loved
aesthetic,
also.
everything about it.
Thank you so much. Oh my god, thanks,
Incredible.
vibes. I love your aesthetic.
Thank you.
But I, yeah, you're welcome. But yeah, so I grew up watching a lot of like dark fantasy, gothic romance, and also like we lived in the city, so every like other block there was a vendor selling like comics for $1, and so that's how I got into like Marvel and stuff. But when it comes to non-comic related stuff, I'm very into relationship dynamics and like character analysis. Like that like butters my bread, so to speak.
Yes. I just
Oh my, that's amazing. Hmm. Uh-huh.
I didn't even know
That's
that was a thing.
insane. Oh my god.
That
I'll
is
need to get a
incredible.
copy.
So valid.
Valid.
Yeah, so I I am not opposed to watching House of the Dragon like conceptually, but HBO Warner Brothers has been on some bullshit
Oh
lately.
god,
I
yeah.
I
Yes,
canceled my
100%.
HBO subscription after
Uh-huh.
they trashed Batgirl, and now they like
Yeah.
keep throwing away like more animated series. Like they got rid of
Mhm.
Infinity
Mhm.
Train. Yeah,
Infinity Train is insane. It's so good. It's so good.
yeah. I just watched it a couple months ago. Like, and
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
literally
Mhm.
finished it just in the nick of time. If I would have procrastinated like another month or two,
Mhm.
it would have been gone. And so I
Yeah,
canceled my
which is so
HBO
insane.
Max subscription after that, and I don't want to give them any more money because like I want that business to fail.
See, that's the thing is
Yes.
speaking of pirates actually, so like that's the best way to start a sentence is speaking of pirates actually.
Yeah. Okay. Fair.
Well,
If
s-
if you can find me a link, then I'll watch it. But otherwise, I don't want them to have my money.
the so like speaking of pirates, like that's a pretty good point. Like my initial reaction when I saw the HBO nonsense, which is what it is, wow, I sound like an old man who's very upset. It's like, it's downright nonsense, but like it presents like this weird sort of dilemma where it's like I don't initial like my initial knee jerk reaction is I no longer want to give you money because you're getting rid of all of these amazing things, but then they still have a few choice shows, especially like Our Flag Means Death, for example, which like it presents this thing of like I I I don't know if I should like be with like I want to withhold this thing, but also these shows that might not have gotten greenlit at other places that are now
Yeah.
greenlit for like more seasons and more content. I don't know
Well,
how to
I think
interact with that.
HBO like got a new CEO or whatever after like Our Flagman's Death got greenlit, and so this new
Okay.
guy is like, I want to appease Middle America, and I want to get rid of anything woke. And so like he was not in charge when Our Flag Means Death got made. Um, and yeah, it's just bonkers. Like their business model is like the point of having a streaming service. The the point is that you have content and people watch it. And their whole thing
Yeah.
is like, let's get rid of not even sell it.
Yeah.
Just throw it in the garbage just for
Yeah.
tax breaks. Like it is a very short-sighted like my dream, what I want to happen. Well, first off, what I want to happen is for more like robust antitrust laws break up like every
Oh God,
monopoly in
yes.
the entertainment industry, but specifically like I want HBO to tank so hard that they have to like sell it to someone else, or they fire that guy and bring in someone else because they're the
Oh.
ugh.
Oh god. Just evaporated. Yep. Mhm. Yeah. Jesus Christ.
I
Jesus Christ, that's insane.
yeah. I I hate that. Um but back to House of the Dragon. Um
Yeah.
Yeah.
I I want to watch it.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Currently, I feel like I've heard that they went right back on the same bullshit of like, oh, let's inflict sexual trauma onto female characters.
Did they?
I also, and now we're only 6 episodes in right now, so I can't speak for the rest of the season.
Yeah.
But from what I've
Yeah.
seen, that I have not seen that happen yet. The only
Mhm.
real violence, like I wouldn't even describe it necessarily as violent.
I
Like
heard
from
there was a forced C-section.
yes, okay. So that
Yeah, they
yeah,
just
and I
like
wouldn't
cut her
necessarily call
stomach
that
open.
sexual violence, but yeah, that it so yeah, basically it's sort of
Invasive,
recontextualized. And
definitely.
I would say that actually it's
Yeah,
interesting because you can tell that there are more female writers on the team than there were for the original show because the way that
100%.
they contextualize women is markedly different. Like they have a very realistic approach to childbirth. Like they in the most recent episode one of the main characters gives birth and they show the afterbirth, they show the cutting the umbilical cord, they show her like struggling to like walk afterward, they show her still bloated after she gives birth, like things that the predominantly male writing team of the original show never would have done. They would have had her doing kick flips like 2 seconds after giving birth. Like, um,
Parkour.
so I would say that like so far, because I have definitely been keeping an eye out for that, and again, we're only 6 episodes in, so I'm not going to make any definitive statements because watch them make a fool of me this Sunday. But like so far, I would say that it hasn't been like there hasn't been a lot of rape scenes or anything like that. But definitely the
Yeah.
most like traumatizing thing was the C-section, which was pushed upon his wife. And it was basically, and even that was sort of contextualized in terms of like his wife has this whole conversation prior. We're basically told in this world, women are expected to make babies and not much else. And so your role in this realm is to be a baby machine, which is why it's such a conflict.
yeah,
This woman wants to be queen. So it's like when you've got these peak characters. So the whole idea is that the mother in the first episode sees herself like has resigned herself to this is my role, this is my battlefield. She says my battlefield is the birthing ground or whatever,
mm,
the birthing bed, and she dies in battle. And they actually intercut her violent C-section
Mm.
with a joust that's happening on the
Oh.
field. So it's kind of like the violence of war, the violence of childbirth. It's like a sort
That's
of
interesting.
juxtaposition, which people will have different feelings on, but I
yeah,
it definitely was more contextualized than just let's be violent against
yeah.
women just for the fuck of it.
Do you know the whole
I
like Watsonian versus Doylist perspectives?
Refresh me.
So Watsonian, it's in terms of like John Watson from Sherlock.
Yeah.
So Watsonian analysis is like within the universe of the story, whereas Doylist is from the perspective of the author. So like
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
The Watsonian analysis is things had to happen that way because that's what makes sense in the universe. But the Doylist analysis is things make that's what makes sense in the universe because the writers chose to make it that way.
Hmm.
The writers
I
like could have chosen to tell the story a different way. I just I just still have a lot of bad blood from Game of Thrones, but I'm willing to give this one a shot.
Hmm.
I just how's Matt Smith? That's my main
He's
concern.
amazing. He's
he's
I am a
incredible.
amazing.
super Hulock girly through and through. In fact,
Me
today
too.
I
Yeah.
was compiling a bunch of like scenes from shows that were like meaningful to me, and like half of them were from the 11th Doctor.
Yeah, he's so good in it.
He's my favorite Doctor. He's still my favorite Doctor. Matt Smith is amazing. I've only, for context, I've only seen one episode of Game of Thrones. I don't know where in the chronology it was because I was watching it while I was getting my hair braided, but
That's how I watched The Godfather. My
hey.
mom had to straighten my hair for 5th grade picture day, and she's like, "Let's watch The Godfather."
This is 5th grade appropriate. But yeah, so I've only seen one episode of and also like I was fairly into Game of Thrones when it was coming out. I got into it really, really intensely right before the last season dropped, and then the last season dropped and I refused to watch it, so I still have it. Hasn't been sullied for me more so than it was already sort of like giving me the ick in certain places.
So
But
wait,
So
what
you
did you only
you
see
said
one
you
episode was?
yeah, you said you got
So
really into it before the last season, but also you only saw one episode.
Yeah.
I've only seen one episode of House of the Dragon.
Okay.
Is what I,
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
It's like,
So
wait.
I've only seen one.
Okay. That makes sense.
I'm obsessed with this thing. I've only seen 3 minutes of it. I mean, to be fair, that is also how I felt about Matt Smith as Doctor Who. But I, I do know the episode that I saw. It was the one where Matt Smith's character, I forget his name. Is it Damon?
Yes, Damon.
Demon? Is it Damon?
It's Damon.
So we love a toxic fave named Damon.
Yes, he's amazing.
But
I mean, he's terrible, but
and
he's
so-
amazing.
the episode that I saw was when folks had caught the main character, whose name again escapes me, with
Rhaenyra.
him in like Rhaenyra. There was the episode that I saw was when they had gone to the sort of like brothel environment and then came back, and there was like a small amount of fallout about that. Like that was just, I kind of caught the beginning, mid to like end of that, and then also I saw a little bit of commentary by one of the folks on staff about like actually who were one of the folks who were actually like behind the show, and she was talking about like that scene and like contextualizing basically like Rhaenyra's agency, and the ways in which that was something that they added, that they were trying to not, I mean, realism in high fantasy settings is always like, you know, what do those words mean? But they were trying to give it the proper amount of weight and make sure that you know, it wasn't basically just a repeat of Game of Thrones.
Yeah, there's definitely a consciousness to it in terms of, like I said, with some of the female writers on the team, like, have definitely been adding more intentionality and consciousness to Rhaenyra's actions.
100%.
Because like when you see, I mean, like I said, when you see a woman written by a man versus a woman, like if you compare the way that they treat sexual agency and the way that they treat like sexual enjoyment and the way that they treat, like they have so many conversations about like childbirth and how it has a physical toll on you and how it's like not, you know, easy. Like it can be a prison for women in as much as it is just like a function for men. Like Rhaenyra has a conversation with her uncle Damon about how he's like, she doesn't want to get married, but her father's going to betroth her to somebody, and he's like, marriage is just a political arrangement, it's not a big deal. And she's like, yeah, you have the luxury to think that because you're a man, you can do whatever you want. Like I am just going to be tied to some lord and then be his baby making machine for the rest of my life. Like that's
Amy March core.
yeah. And so it has that sort of thing, and it's like I compare that sort of reflection of agency to like how women were written in the original Game of Thrones, where you have characters like Sansa implying that getting raped actually made her stronger, because that's how victims of sexual violence talk. And I'm just like, you know, what was the thought process here? So I like that we're getting that mentality like from a woman's mind in terms of like, how do we contextualize these things both in universe and as viewers?
Yeah,
100%.
I think
Agreed.
something that I've been thinking about. Wait, I just lost my train of thought, like in the middle of my sentence.
I think.
Never,
do we all have
never
ADHD?
mind. Yeah.
Yeah. Like every single time we have a conversation, it goes in a million different directions. So just buckle down now. That's going to be how the show is.
I was thinking like 15 minutes back, when we like circled back from our HBO detour, I was like, the perfect description for this episode would be Rynn, Weaver, and Parker try very hard to talk about House of the Dragon.
That's going to be every episode.
We're
We have a
trying.
topic, and that is the general framework that we start with. Lord only knows where we're going to end up.
I think so. I grew up I was very into fantasy growing up, but my fantasy outlets were like Narnia and The Lord of the Rings, which have a lot in
Homeschool
common
core.
because homeschool core, yes. They have a lot in common because the writers were best bros with each other. And they have like you can there's a level of idealism in them where like even though Lord of the Rings is like much darker and grittier in tone than Narnia, like you still sort of have the idea that like the good guys are gonna win. And it has a very mythic sort of tone. And I think I find fantasy more enjoyable when it leans into the mythical tone instead of like trying really hard to be sort of historically accurate for a historical time period that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Like I've been watching a lot of Dimension 20 lately, and Dimension 20 is like some of my favorite fantasy. And this most recent season is A Court of Fae and Flowers. And the DM is Abria Iyengar, who's fucking rad. If y'all aren't familiar with Abria Iyengar, love a black woman from infinity to infinity.
Nice.
But it's set in like the D&D Feywilds, and it's imagine just like this big huge Regency like Bridgerton era garden party that lasts for several weeks, and also everyone is Fey and immortal and has magic. But they like really lean hard into the Regency aspect. Like there's letter writing and like telling rumors. Now compare that to a card game I got recently called Lords and Ladies, and they like specify in the instructions for Lords and Ladies that like the point of the card game is to like marry people and have offspring and like hire servants and like level up in social rank. And they say like you're not allowed to marry a same-sex partner unless the entire table agrees to do same-sex partners. And I get that there's like something in the game mechanics where they only want you to be able to have like half of the pool, but like it seems so arbitrary. And they're like, this is based in history, so we have to be historical accurate in not allowing gay people. Whereas with A Court of Fae and Flowers, they just like, okay, the entire premise of this world, like everybody is whatever sexuality.
Exactly.
And it's just like, that's just there from the get-go.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's like, as an adult, you know, there was this sort of like, when you become a man, you put away childish things, including the desire not to be seen as childish.
Mm-hmm.
So like when I was really young, I leaned really heavily into the idealistic sort of fantasy. And then when I got older, I'm like, no, I'm a grown up. I like things gritty and raw. And now I'm like, actually, I think I just want to watch some gay people have a tea party and wear little flower hats.
It's also funny, like, it makes me think of, like, what you're describing in terms of, like, characters, you know, historical accuracy be damned, but, like, more focused on just the characters being what they are. I think about, like, Our Flag Means Death, and how it's, like,
exactly.
you know, roughly in a
it's
historical
like
period.
Muppets logic.
But exactly,
Straight
there's
up
no
Muppet
attempt to make it seem
shenanigans.
period.
Exactly.
It's fan fiction. It's historical RPF.
Exactly.
Like,
I feel
and
like
we love it that way.
When people talk about historical accuracy in fantasy in terms of you know, violence against women, women's roles in society, you know, queerness, they really, really, really want to ram home that they want those things to be historically accurate. Also, like, whether or not black people exist.
Yeah.
Like,
well, that's the thing. It's not even about historical accuracy, because they only say that in defense of things like violence against women and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, you know, people also had consensual sex in ancient times.
Yeah. And you could turn that around and be like, okay, but The Witcher has potatoes in it. Potatoes didn't make it back to the old world until, like, you know, post-Columbus. You know, like, what kind of dyes were you using for your textiles? Like, oh, that region didn't have access to such and such. Like, the price of iron, blah, blah, blah. It's like, there's a very limited scope of what they actually care about in terms of historical accuracy, you know, because, like, in the real Middle Ages, you know, if they wanted to represent that, then there'd be a lot bigger role of, like, monasteries.
Mm-hmm.
Also, like, people in the Middle Ages had a shit ton of free time. You know, they'd all, like, have little archery games on Sundays after church, hang out on the village green, you know. Like, the people who want history to seem, like, dark and gritty are doing so because it's a conscious choice.
Yeah.
No, 100%. One of my favorite things to talk about that usually comes up, especially on my live streams or literally just in the middle of the street or at a Trader Joe's line when anybody brings up Harry Potter near me, is that I will like go on very intense, just flames on the side of my face talks about one of my favorite things in media, specifically in fiction and fantasy and books, is when I can read something and I know that the work itself has outsmarted the author and the author's intent. It's like you make something and you're like, this is what this is, and then the work is like, I'm so sorry that I'm actually just like a magnifying glass for all of your bigotry. And it's the funniest thing to me. And so and it literally, like, that's what it is. Historical accuracy is only like historical accuracy when you have a high fantasy in-depth like built world doesn't apply unless you're being historically accurate to those times. Like if it's based off of our actual times, then it's not, just by nature of it being fantasy, you have the you have permission, and it's actually encouraged to veer into a different lane. And historical accuracy is only like the trump card that people use when they're like literally again when they're like, well, black people weren't invented until 2003, obviously.
Also,
So
don't get me started on Harry Potter world building.
that's
Also,
gonna
have
take
you ever heard
like
of an
a few
yeah, have you ever
episodes.
heard of an improv game called Don't Get Me Started, where you just have to
Yes.
pick a random topic and then like go on a
Yes.
rant
I
about
love
it,
that game.
No,
angry rant?
we should do that for one episode.
Yeah,
Oh my
we
god,
totally
or
should.
Yeah,
actually,
just rotate. Don't
segment,
get me
yeah.
started.
I,
Yes.
I think this is probably a good time to put in our commercial break.
Oh
Yeah.
yay, yeah.
Not like at the moment we don't have any official sponsors, but this is our kind of moment to plug like our stuff. So like I said, I'm Rynn. Most people know me as Rynn on TikTok, and I'm also on Instagram. And my fiance and I also have a joint thing called Wordy and Nerdy. So we have a Twitch together, and we have a YouTube channel together. So make sure that you follow us on all of those things. Of course, links will be in the description. And where can we find you, Weaver?
Hi there, I'm Weaver. Most people know me as the Woodmother. You can find me on TikTok at the underscore Woodmother, and on YouTube without the underscore. Also, I want to take this opportunity to tell y'all about a really cool reading group I am a part of as a co-host. It's called Primordium. And the way it's set up is that there's 5 co-hosts: me, TX Watson, Kenna, aka Human Espresso and or Mouse Abolition. Kenna's so smart. I'm like starstruck at Kenna. Kenna's so cool. Han Kaylee, Madeline. I think that's everybody. I think that's all 5 of us. And there is a private Discord server. If you subscribe to any one of the 5 of us on Patreon, you get access to the Discord server. And every Tuesday, the 5 of us rotate choosing a reading for the week. Sometimes it's fiction, sometimes it's, like a scholarly article, sometimes it's a video. And we usually have a like read along that is open to everybody, Patreon patron or no, on Madeline's Twitch channel at the Eclectic Library every Tuesday around 6:30. And then after we do the read aloud, that again everybody is free to hop into, then we move over to Discord for the Patreon patron group discussion, and we have we have this interactive discussion. We talk back and forth about like the themes, about kind of stuff you do in a book club. It's really cool, and each of the 5 of us have very like different areas of expertise. Like TX Watson knows a lot about philosophy, and Han Kaylee knows a lot about medical ethics, and Kenna is like an expert on film, especially from like a Black lens. I have done like a lot of research on the Harlem Renaissance, so It is a very cool book club, and I hope that you join us. And even if you're not in a position to subscribe to me on Patreon, which I would recommend because I like being paid for my labor, you can still check us out on Twitch on Tuesday at 6:30.
Nice.
And also subscribe to me on YouTube because I've been putting out I'm gonna be putting out more YouTube videos. I just posted a YouTube video a couple days ago. I have a story that I've been working on for almost 2 years called Gate City Blues, and I documented like the whole process on my original TikTok account, the Woodmother, without an underscore. But then that account got hacked, and a lot of those videos became like inaccessible to the public. So I made a compilation of all of my Gate City Blues TikToks and put them in one concise little YouTube video. So you should definitely check that out and subscribe to me while you're at it. All right, take it away, Parker.
Vibes.
And now the weather.
And now the weather. I don't have nearly as much to say, but my name is Parker.
You can
know
give
me
your
from
Venmo. This is the commercial break, so just be like, give me
yes,
money,
cash,
actually.
Cash. Actually, yes. No, so my name is Parker. Most people know me as HumbleTortoise or Witch Hazel, depends on if you know me from content and writing or music. But yeah, I would say just follow me on TikTok at HumbleTortoise. Follow me on YouTube at HumbleTortoise. Follow me on Instagram at HumbleTortoise. Also follow me on Twitter. I don't have a lot of people on Twitter, which is probably valid because yesterday I tweeted that, like I stepped in like pig guts or whatever. But that was a fun experience, by the way. Super interesting. But yeah, me being on a podcast.
One of my only tweets was an Our Flag Means Death fan edit that I tagged Con O'Neill in, and he retweeted it. And then I also got a retweet from like the author of This Is How You Lose the Time War, and I was like, rad. And that's like one of the only things I've ever posted on Twitter. And I was like, all right, quit while you're ahead.
I'm pretty active on Twitter as well. I forgot to mention that.
Vibes. Oh, I should follow you guys on Twitter then.
We'll have all our links in the description.
Yeah. Yes.
So that'll make it easy for y'all to find us.
Indeed.
Closing out other things. Spotify, find me as Witch Hazel, WITCHHAZEL, all one word. And then my Patreon, where I'm posting exclusive patron content and early content for YouTube stuff, is there as well. And also, if you are someone who would be interested in perceiving me, one of the tiers on my Patreon has my it's a video introducing my fanfic username in case you want to just in case you want to read my fan fiction. Yeah, it's like not behind a paywall. It's on AO3, but if you want to know specifically that it was me that wrote it, it's there. If you would like to see my steric fanfic that I wrote in 2018.
I mean, you know that you're gonna get a real picture when you like start plucking fanfics.
I mean, it's really just me like projecting and like perpetuating trauma onto the characters that make me feel the most comfortable, and it's really just a bunch of character analysis and relationship dynamic like vibes and stuff like that, which is not as smutty as I would like, but I'll work my way up there at some point, I'm sure.
Great. Now
I have very smutty fanfiction if y'all want to read it.
The what?
Oh yeah, you do.
I have very smutty fanfiction. I'm not afraid. I have no shame. I asked my mom to proofread my fanfiction. That's how little shame I have.
Wow, that is so far beyond anything that I will ever do in this life. But
it was my Venom fanfiction. I was like, will you check this for typos? And she's like, I have a lot of questions. I'm like, I will not answer them. Just check it for typos. I'm not going to address anything.
You're so brave.
Oh my god, braver than any U.S. Marine.
I was going to say.
Anyway,
100%, yes.
So I think our back nine conversation is, what was it again?
We're each going to rotate, the three of us. We'll take a little 5-minute chunk to just info dump about something that you're really into this week.
Us limiting it to 5 minutes is going to be interesting, but we'll see. Okay, so who wants to go first?
You can go first.
I was hoping somebody else would follow. I was hoping somebody else would
No,
volunteer.
unless you
Okay,
don't want
so
to.
wait, well, okay, I'll go over. All right, so 5 minutes info dump, just about anything.
Yeah.
Okay,
Anything nerdy.
all right, so I guess I'll just info dump about more Game of Thrones stuff because I'm in a very Game of Thrones mood lately, and not only have I been watching House of the Dragon, but I've also been reading the Game of Thrones books. Just finished the first
Oh,
one. I am working my way through the second one. I'm listening to them on Audible. These books are a minimum of 25 hours long, and the one I'm currently reading is like 35 hours long. So these shits take me like a month to get through, but like they are fucking
Damn.
monstrous books, but they're very interesting and they're very like engaging. And the way that George R. R. Martin tells stories is he tells like everything from a point of view character, and so each chapter starts with the character's name and then you get to so you're looking at things from their perspective. Sometimes the stuff that's happening to a character is simultaneously happening to another character, and you'll get so the same event but you'll see it from this person's perspective and then from this person's perspective. He weaves in a lot of really interesting character moments and stuff like that. And I'm also very interested in like the lore. I've done a lot of reading about like the lore for House of the Dragon. I've been doing Sims playthroughs on Twitch. Always be plugging twitch.tv/wordnerd, where I have been like playing as certain characters from the show. So I have like my New Crest village. I started a new save where the entire village is populated with Game of Thrones families. So there's like House Stark and there's
incredible.
House Targaryen and then I also have a Sept of Baelor. And because I'm currently in the
That's a lot.
in the process of syncretizing my families. So I have like 6 generations back of Targaryens. Like I went and studied the timeline, like the family tree, so that I could make the Sims relationships correct. So like literally, like I'm currently have a Daemon, but like it shows his grandparent and his great grandparent. It starts with like Jaehaerys, and I'm eventually gonna connect it to Daenerys because I have Daenerys right now and Viserys. They're running around, but I have neglected to connect the two families. But eventually, I'm going to fill in all the blanks of the family tree. So like the whole Targaryen family tree lineage
You
is there.
are committed.
Holy shit.
We should do a whole episode one day just devoted to like not
Sims.
just The Sims in general, but specifically like using The Sims to explore other like nerd interests.
Oh yes.
Like
Okay.
y'all know I was really
Okay.
into White Collar. I mean, I still am into White Collar, but like I was binging it for a couple weeks, and then I built Neil Caffrey's apartment in Sims 4. You know, I really like the way that Sims allows you to sort of just get inside of the world. You know, like that's just like how I watch stuff for the costumes. Now I start watching things for the architecture, and I'll be watching something and I'm like, oh, that is cool. I want to recreate that in The Sims. I like that wall color. I want to build a little miniature version of it that I can run around in.
I do the same thing with Sims. I'm like upset. I was playing Sims like before we got on
Same.
call.
I
And
almost forgot, and my phone
but
reminded me. I was literally playing Sims, and my phone's like podcast time, and I'm like, oop.
I just like for me the main reason why I do Sims is because I'm currently working on a script, a pilot for like this really cool like fantasy detective noir, but not really like sarcastic little non-binary bullshit show that I'm working on. And basically the reason why I usually play Sims is because it helps me to have a visual like 3D, it's super detailed model of one, like what the spaces look like and what the characters look like and what their aesthetics are and stuff like that. And sometimes I'll be writing and I'll switch over to Sims so I can mess around with like my OCs, and then something will happen in Sims and I'm like, I'm gonna write that down. And that's a vibe. But also ultimately the main reason why I've gotten into Sims historically is because I had so many ships in my head in 2013, 2014, 15 Tumblr, and none of them were canon. So I just make all of my OTPs and I put them in little houses together, and now it's like boom, like Steve Rogers and Bucky Barnes are married now and they have a little
Nice.
house in Newcrest and it's a cute little vibe.
Oh,
But
you can
yeah,
also
I
canonically
actually
make non-binary characters in The Sims now. They
yes, and you
introduced
can mess around with
pronouns.
their sexuality
Okay, let
as
Yes.
me
well.
complain about that real quick.
Okay.
I
They
like what they've
there's still
done so
misgendering that
far.
happens though.
Yeah, I like what they've done so far, but it is not enough. Because
It's
if
wonky.
I create myself in The Sims,
Mhm.
and spend like hours getting like the facial features just right. I can give my character they them pronouns, but I can't get rid of the boobs. And there is no option for a sort of like androgynous body type. There's either female body frame, male body frame. What if I want a mustache or beard? The only ways to have a mustache or beard is to switch to a male body type, and then that changes your whole facial structure, makes
It
your
does.
neck bulky. Like it, I want to be able to just like
Not the
I
bulk.
don't want any of the features to be tied to one specific gender. I want to be able to put a mustache and beard on a female bodied sim if I feel like it, or get rid of the boobs completely.
Ah,
That's my rant. I do
Yeah,
I
like the
will
body
that's
hair update
say
though.
one of my biggest woes is actually that, like, regardless of like what the base body type is, there's no way to add or remove like certain body parts, specifically again with like chest and stuff. That kind of, makes me kind of sad, very sad. I did find, if you there's I think it's like there's the base body type, and then I think it's like appearance or something like right under it at the bottom of like the gender or sexual sex customization. If you mess around with that, sometimes you can get better results where if you have a character that's like AFAB, they still look AFAB while still having like characteristics that are like it's like I
mm.
found small ways around it, but I
You got to
have
do a lot of
characters that have
tweaking.
boobs and also have mustaches now.
And there's
So
also some CC of different body types, so you could probably find a more androgynous body type and download some CC. But yeah, the base game should have that.
I'm modding top surgery scars onto all of my
Hell
sims.
yeah.
Hell
I'm
yeah.
sure
All
there
of
are
them.
top surgery like mods, like it's like
They're
because I've made so many mod adjustments. I have so many extra body types. I have an extra like a more obese body type because the fattest that the Sims get isn't like that fat.
oh god. Yeah, I love the pronouns option, but
The,
the body type
Yeah,
they're
stuff
so
still
weird.
needs
Also,
to be
like
severely tweaked.
breeding the Sims always makes like the neck really long and the chin really short. Have y'all noticed that? It's
oh
just like
yeah.
a weird, like
You
the
know,
chin will be up here, and then like the hips are like so weirdly narrow. Like the body proportions are so
and
wonky.
you know what else I'd love to
Yeah.
see is height modification. Like I downloaded
Oh,
mods for that, but like, why
please.
is it like
Yes.
not everybody isn't the exact same height as an adult?
Yeah. 100%. 100%. Yes. Didn't they used to have height modification in like Sims 2 or some shit? And it's like maybe I was just like modding back then, but my
Yeah,
mother
I
was
don't
also
think that
obsessed
they.
with
I think
Sims.
they've always pretty much had standard body sizes for each age range. But I think that there needs to be more variation. Like I said, you can download mods and stuff, but like it's like at the
Yeah.
base game, it's like every toddler is the same size, every child is the same size, every adult is the same size.
Mm.
Yeah,
To be fair, in terms of, I
I'm
guess,
like
like,
5'7",
mm,
and my husband is 6'4", and we're the same height in The Sims, which is the only time that will ever happen.
Rynn, how tall are you?
I am 5'6". A
Okay,
lot of people for
fuck
some
both
reason
of
think
you
I'm
guys.
taller when they see me on like TikTok or whatever. Like I don't know if it's the angle I'm filming from, but I have so many people like, "Oh my god, how tall are you?" And I'm like, "I mean, 5'6". I'm very average."
How tall are you, Parker? You don't want to
Is that
say?
a sore spot?
My state ID says it's not okay. So it wasn't a sore spot until a few years ago. My one of my partners, we were hanging out. We were having a very like Studio Ghibli like B footage kind of Sunday. It was wonderful. We were like reading. There was tea. It was nice and summery outside. The sun was shining through. We were both reading on our individual tablets, and then out of nowhere, they just turn to me, and she goes, "Ha, you're short," and then bonks me in my forehead with the tablet, and then goes back to reading.
Wow,
It's
that
the
was
funniest thing I've ever seen in my life.
hate crimes.
It's so no, right, like literally. She calls me vertically challenged, which is
Oof.
the
You're fun
funniest.
size.
No, it's literally. But yeah, no. My state ID says that I'm. My ID says that I'm 5'3". That is not my height. That's all I'm gonna. Stop laughing at me, Weaver. It's so.
Well, now I'm
You
all.
can keep laughing at me. It's hilarious.
My husband acts like I'm so tiny, and I'm like, I'm actually above average height. Thank you very
Yeah, I
much.
mean, well, you're
As a
about the
matter
same
of
height as
fact,
me. Not much.
yeah.
My boyfriend is 5'10", so like not super tall. He's less than 6 feet, but he is taller than me.
Yeah, I'm like by no means petite.
Mhm.
Also like we're almost out of time. Do you
Yes.
wanna
Wrap-
do you wanna info dump
wrap-
real quick, Parker? I feel like I already did
Um.
my info dump on a court of Fae and Flowers earlier.
You also talked about Sims.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was gonna say I feel like The Sims kind of took the info dump
Yeah.
ADHD
Okay.
brain for all three of us.
Yeah, I feel
But
like
I
all
mean,
three of us.
That's
um,
fair.
I've also been like I geek out pretty often about like I get really okay I get really enthusiastic about like all of the logistics that goes into like just fandom and fandom culture, yes, and like fan fiction, yes, but like as it's as a writer it's great when I have to do these like background research for my OCs and my original stories, but also when I'm writing fan fiction because there's also a hyper focus behind it. It's like I know so much about like pre-World War II like gay Brooklyn now than I would have a bit ago. I really like the amount of like historical research that goes into just creating fanfic when you want to be like as true to it and as true to the time period, especially if it's like within the last like 100 years or so as possible. Like I recently started writing a Stranger Things fan fiction, and side note, I wasn't that into Stranger Things. I mean, I was, but like I always felt like there was something missing until season 4, and then they killed off the thing that was missing. So whatever. But there's a Hellfire T-shirt in my drawer. We're not going to talk about it. But so I've just been doing a lot of like
I've only
research
watched
on
2
like
episodes of Stranger Things.
80s Indiana now. That's valid. That's valid. Honestly
I'd like to
completely
start it
valid,
back.
but
Like my fiance's trying to get me into it. I just like you know
80% of the characters are autistic, and that's cool.
Yeah.
But there's also a lot about the show that I'm like,
my whole thing is my brain gets locked into like a certain zone and I cannot make it go to another. Like right now I'm in Game of Thrones. I cannot make
yeah,
my brain go to a
I
different
get
place
that.
right now.
I get that. For me,
That's
it's
so
like
fair.
it's the opposite. My brain wants to go everywhere, and I have to stop myself from what like I need to watch A League of Their Own. I need to like rewatch The Iron Giant, but like I'm like in my little like Stranger Things like steady hyper focus, and I need to like stay there because I want to. I'm just enjoying the fact that my TikTok FYP is just consistently like fan art again about like one specific thing, and like my Tumblr is like also like pretty consistently like blowing up with this one specific thing, and I'm like I'm gonna hyper focus on this other thing later because I know as soon as I watch this new piece of media, there's like I'm not going to want to do anything else, and I'm very much enjoying like the little like burrito blanket of
That's
Stranger
fair.
Things vibes.
Valid.
But yeah, I mean my partner's also not into it. I'm going to be holding them at you know metaphorical fit like knife point and making them like have a slumber party with me so we can binge it. Just I mean I was already into like D&D and like dark horror and like 80s culture and stuff like that, so it was just a vibe.
Are you okay?
I think it's on my side.
I don't. Our dryer doesn't work, so we have to hang our clothes up outside. And I just remembered that I forgot all of the bed sheets. They're just draped over the fence, and it's dark now.
Oh, nice.
So, no big
Well,
deal.
I think we are, as you said, running out of time. This is like this is we literally started this at 6:30, and like it took us half an hour to even get to this point. So, so if are we ready to wrap it up, or does anybody have any last?
I
Yeah.
think
All right.
I
Well,
think it's time for an outro.
yes. Well, thank you so much for watching this or listening to this inaugural episode of Close Encounters with the Blerd Kind. We hope you enjoyed it. As we said earlier, you can find us at Renstar, _Woodmother, and Sloth. What was it?
At HumbleTortoise.
Well, okay, I don't know where that came from. HumbleTortoise.
It's humble.tortoise, right?
Humble.tortoise is only on my Instagram because HumbleTortoise is taken, which is rude to me, and also any creature with a shell who's a land animal. Disrespectful.
Interesting.
Stay humble.
But it's
exactly. But anyway, we'll put all of those links in the description so you can easily find us, and we will see you next time.